Imagine stepping onto a quiet deck at dawn, where your hands find the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat, while your eyes sweep a horizon that asks nothing of you, yet offers everything in return. In that stillness, as if the sea itself were an unrolled parchment of possibility, Stoicism whispers its first foundational truth, that everything you truly want begins not with a demand made at the universe, but with a decision made in yourself, to act within what you can control, while honoring what lies beyond your reach. If you want to experience an hour or more of absorbing narration that gently maps a pathway from the storm of anxious longing to the clarity of purposeful action, then stay with this voice as we journey together through 10 Stoic rules that refine your attention, reshape your habits, and realign your intentions so that outcomes gather around you in a way that feels almost inevitable. Yet we will not promise magic, and we will not hide behind symbols or effects, because the magic lives in the steadiness of your choices and the dignity of your craft. Picture your mind as a garden of thoughts, where some flowers need sunlight and others require shade. Then imagine walking through that garden with a calm steward who, without fanfare, tends to the ground, prunes what obstructs growth, waters what nourishes life, and trusts the seasons to do the rest through the lens of Stoicism. Everything that manifests in your life is not the result of an unpredictable universe answering a plea, but rather the consequence of a cultivated character responding to reality with accuracy, courage, and fairness. Begin by locating the steering wheel, because without clarity on what you can truly steer, the rest of your effort drifts like a boat without a rudder. Stoicism teaches that your thoughts, your judgments, your choices, and your actions form the sovereign territory where your life is made and remade, while outcomes, other people's opinions, and the comings and goings of circumstances remain outside the grip of your hands. If you notice the familiar ache of impatience when a message isn't answered, if you feel the ache of irritation when a plan falls through, if you sense the ache of envy when someone else appears to glide toward the prize you also seek, then trace that ache back to its source, and you will usually find a tiny but powerful error in ownership, where you tried to steer a wheel that belongs to someone else or to fate itself. Redirect your attention in such moments with the simple but profound pivot. The only thing I own is the quality of my preparation, the integrity of my effort, the honesty of my speech, the steadiness of my discipline, and the clarity of my decisions. Let that sentence become a lighthouse in the fog of daily life, and you will realize that what used to feel frustrating is simply the mind trying to grip what it cannot, while what becomes potent is the body discovering the ordinary joy of doing what is within you. When your work begins to revolve around what you can control, you stop bargaining with outcomes and start befriending process, and process, when treated with respect, quietly expands your sphere of influence in ways that feel inevitable, as if the world itself rewards alignment by creating the conditions where your actions can meet the right opportunities. From that foundational clarity, the second rule unfurls like a banner over a procession. Define your pursuit with noble purpose rather than with needy urgency, for the quality of your intention determines the quality of your manifestation and the resilience of your effort. Stoic mentors advise us to write the law of our life that points toward what is good in itself, meaning we choose a direction that honors truth, courage, justice, and self-control, because those are not merely virtues to admire but engines to carry us through difficulty without self-erosion. If you want something and you attach it to an identity that cracks when a setback arrives, then your pursuit becomes brittle, your ego becomes a fragile shell, and your disappointment becomes your master. If, instead, you frame your goal as a service to something larger, whether to your craft, your community, or your own growing capacity, then you experience stability that carries you through the long arc of any endeavor. Imagine the difference between saying, "I want that position and I want to grow in leadership so I can build better teams and create value." The first statement is a hook for your pride that can fail under pressure, while the second statement is a compass that invites you to stand taller even when things do not go according to plan. When you align your actions with a noble purpose, you begin to draw into your life people and circumstances that resonate with the same integrity. You attract not merely outcomes, but culture. You attract not merely prizes, but partnerships. And you attract not merely approval, but resonance that feels true, because you are not asking the universe to validate you, but rather to collaborate with you. The third rule serves as the keystone that holds the arch. Prepare for things to be difficult, because any real manifestation of your desired life requires resistance to challenge your resolve, and the person who fortifies the will through disciplined training becomes the one who arrives where they said they would. Stoicism bids you to see trials not as obstacles to your happiness, but as tests that sharpen your ability to meet the moment well. You can rehearse your performance in difficult conditions by practicing voluntary discomfort, by taking on small tasks that demand focus and integrity, by refusing the easy escape that anxiety proposes. If you want to become someone who reliably produces results in the face of noise, then put your body through the discipline of consistent effort and your mind through the training of premeditatio malorum, which is to say, rehearse the difficulties you anticipate and plan your response so that when they arrive you are not startled or undone. The paradox here is both simple and profound. The more you practice meeting difficulty as a teacher rather than as a threat, the easier life feels, because you have built the psychological muscle that separates calm from panic and action from hesitation. And when life has fewer surprises, the universe seems to open to you because your actions are no longer derailed by shock. From this place of sturdy resolve, we proceed to the fourth rule, which is the way of seeing. Treat first impressions as proposals rather than facts, and let your reflection pass their value before you consent to their influence. Modern life bombards you with tiny provocations, quick reactions, sharp judgments, biting remarks that tug your attention like a string attached to a kite. Your mind, if left to immediate impulse, is already flying in the direction of whichever breeze is strongest, but your wisdom, if cultivated with a calm pause, can become a much more reliable guide. The Stoic practice of impression appraisal invites you to breathe, to imagine a gentle pause button pressed between stimulus and response, and then to ask simple yet essential questions. What am I seeing? What am I making it mean? What action best honors virtue and outcome now? When you transform yourself into someone who sees rather than merely reacts, your life becomes an act of craftsmanship. You carve intention into the rough wood of events rather than surrendering your days to the unpredictable cutting edge of impulse. Consider what happens to your influence when you practice this discipline with other people. You start to listen with peasants instead of waiting for your turn to speak. You start to sense the difference between confusion and hostility. You start to offer counsel that is anchored in humility rather than in defensiveness. And you find that calm itself becomes a magnet, because people trust the steadiness of your presence more than the speed of your mouth. Once you strengthen the way you see, the fifth rule colors the way you behave. Practice voluntary discomfort so your choices are not hostages to comfort, which means training your capacity to do what is right even when it is unpleasant. There is a tranquil but stubborn sweetness to this practice that feels at first counterintuitive, yet gradually becomes the signature of a person who radiates integrity. You choose the route that requires a little more effort, and the early riser that demands a little more discipline. You decide to do your exercise even on days when your mind proposes excuses. You stretch your comfort with the unfamiliar through daily small acts that calibrate your nervous system to honor effort over ease. When you normalize doing things that are beneficial yet uncomfortable, you create a blueprint in your body and mind that guarantees you will keep walking when the path turns steep. Your desires, when you are uncomfortable enough to stay committed to them, produce outcomes that are not sudden flashes, but rather the steady glowing light of reliable progress. Manifestation through the Stoic lens is less about rapid signing of windfalls and more about the elegant inevitability that emerges from a person who has trained themselves to be reliable in the face of discomfort. Such reliability opens doors and invites collaboration precisely because others can trust your commitments and your delivery. With your nerves steady and your discomfort normalized, the sixth rule invites you to do the difficult thing now. Avoid procrastination, not merely as a productivity habit, but as a moral commitment to honor your future self by allowing present honesty to shape tomorrow's reality. Stoicism aligns procrastination with the error of believing that our future decisions will be wiser than our present decisions without any additional training, which is like assuming you will be able to swim when you reach the lake simply because you have watched other people glide through the water. Resolve, instead, to take the first step of the difficult task right away. Even if the step is modest, you can write one paragraph of the proposal. You can make the uncomfortable call. You can begin the call. You can ask the honest question in the meeting. You can send the draft that invites feedback instead of waiting for perfection. What you will notice is that each small initiation reduces the weight of the task, while delaying initiation increases its magnitude in imagination, and the cost of your hesitation accrues compound interest that steals your potential when you move through the world. Honoring the present moment with decisive action, you gather momentum and eventually discover that many things come to you because you have positioned yourself where opportunity can touch you. You become, in effect, someone who does not wait for alignment to arrive before moving. Rather, you become the kind of person who creates alignment through movement, and the universe responds with a series of appointments, openings, and receptions that feel like serendipity but are simply the fruit of timely action. After you have overcome the inertia that hides in procrastination, the seventh rule opens the possibility of more than one life by freeing you from rigid identity. Do not define yourself by your role, but remember that you carry roles that you play with dignity and craft, because the deeper your identity aligns with timeless virtues, the more flexibility you enjoy when circumstances ask you to pivot. Many people treat their job title, their relationship status, or their public image as a cage that holds their true self inside a too small shape. Stoicism suggests instead that your self is a sanctuary that offers hospitality to many roles without surrendering its core, and that when you treat your various performances as exercises in courage, fairness, and service, you become both more valuable to others and more fulfilled in your own life. If you sense the quiet shame that arises when something you considered central to your identity slips away, recall that who you are beneath your roles is your capacity to act virtuously, to stay curious, to build trust, and to make a difference. Then watch your work transmute from desperate clinging to graceful leadership, because leadership itself is a practice of helping others become who they can be. When you loosen the grip of rigid identity, you allow paths to grow, you stop defending fragile narratives, and you start exploring paths with open curiosity. And as your curiosity expands, you discover that your life can contain many worthy trajectories instead of the single narrow line that once seemed necessary for validation. The world responds to this by offering you more options, and people respond by trusting your adaptability, while you in turn respond by honoring each role with depth without binding yourself to it. From this flexible foundation, we arrive at the eighth rule, which is the core engine of any credible manifestation. Focus on process rather than outcome, knowing that the outcome is the flowering while the process is the garden. To invest in the process is to honor your integrity, while to overvalue the outcome risks treating your soul like a ledger that counts only profits and ignores the cultivation that made profit possible. If you are a creator, you will build your process around disciplined practice that ends at a time set by you. If you are an entrepreneur, you will honor your process by presenting your work with integrity, making proposals that are honest, and making decisions that reflect your values. If you are a student, you will invest in your process by reading carefully, thinking precisely, and practicing constantly. Outcomes in this approach are not controlled by you, yet they do form around you when you follow the process with fairness and courage. Success becomes the natural consequence of doing what good people do without cutting corners, and failure becomes the teacher that clarifies where your process needs improvement. Imagine attending to your craft like a gardener attending to soil, ensuring that your preparation, your discipline, and your honesty create an environment where talent can thrive. Then, imagine standing in that garden at the end of each season with the same calm regard, accepting what grew and planning the improvements for the next season, and you will notice that your life is not waiting for a miracle but is participating in a rhythm that feels balanced and real. The ninth rule expands the scale plan with the long view in mind and practice preparedness over urgency, which means that the arc of your effort stretches across years and your identity becomes a traveler whose story unfolds with patience rather than someone demanding immediate signs of arrival. Stoicism encourages premeditatio bonorum, the rehearsal of future rewards earned through virtue, alongside premeditatio malorum, so that you approach the future with a balanced mind that anticipates both the challenges and the benefits that disciplined effort can bring. You train your desires to enjoy process and skill rather than to chase only the glitter of outcomes. Your day becomes more like a marathoner's routine than a sprinter's dash. You measure progress by how well you kept your commitments, how much you improved your craft, and how honestly you presented yourself, not merely by whether the applause arrived today. As you practice this wider view, your decisions align with the deep structures of life. Your habits shape you into someone whose presence signals reliability, and your calendar becomes an instrument of growth. People and opportunities come to you because your reputation becomes your extension into the world, and your environment becomes a place where you are offered roles and resources that could not be demanded but can be earned through consistent alignment. Manifestation in this lens is not a single event that pronounces your worth, but a series of receptions that reveal your capacity. Over time, you become the person who quietly walks into rooms where things happen because your presence is expected to add value. The 10th rule closes the circle with a generosity of perspective that is both humble and courageous. Accept what you cannot change and act within what you can, knowing that the whole contains a wisdom that is larger than your private desire, yet your integrity can be the means by which that wisdom expresses itself through you. Stoicism asks you to love your fate, which is not fatalism but rather the courage to own what is yours while making peace with what is not. When you accept the shape of what comes, you free yourself from the exhausting task of resisting reality, and you redirect your energy into actions that can produce actual change within the boundaries that the world provides. Consider how your life shifts when you stop wrestling with external events and instead wrestle with your own craft. Consider how your mind changes when you stop expecting others to conform to your fantasies and instead design your influence so that your ideas serve them. Consider how your spirit changes when you stop measuring the universe by the speed at which it meets your expectations and instead measure yourself by the steadiness with which you meet your own. In this state, you manifest not merely what you want, but what you can become, and people and circumstances respond to your inner stability with their own gifts. You form partnerships where each party becomes more capable, you receive guidance that sharpens your strategy, and you create opportunities that nurture your potential. You become part of a living whole that operates through countless choices, and you carry forward the human contribution to that whole by staying honest, by staying brave, by staying fair, and by staying in control of what is yours. If you hold these 10 rules in your heart and let them shape your days, you will begin to notice a quiet revolution in the way the world meets you, not because the universe becomes a charmer who grants your wishes, but because you become a person who designs your life around reality rather than around desire, and your design produces the effect of seeming effortless success. Manifestation reimagined through Stoicism is less about magic and more about meaning, less about trying to force outcomes and more about becoming the kind of person who attracts outcomes by virtue of how they move through the world. You let go of urgency and plant patience. You release rigid identity and open flexibility. You choose discomfort and honor integrity. You treat impressions with deliberation and maintain calm. You prioritize process over outcome and invest in craft that lasts. You do the difficult thing now and create momentum that few people are willing to sustain. You walk with humility that makes you teachable and with courage that makes you unstoppable. To ground these ideas and turn them into daily practice, consider this straightforward cadence of micro moves that builds momentum without demanding dramatic transformation all at once. In the morning, you can set your intention by reminding yourself of the dichotomy of control, by stating out loud the few things you will own today that lie within your reach, and by identifying the one quality you will practice, such as patience or generosity. You can begin with a few minutes of breathing and a clear reading of your schedule to decide which tasks deserve your early energy and which deserve your attention later, because your attention is a finite resource and you are wise to invest it where your control is strongest. Throughout the day, you can practice impression appraisal by pausing before you react, by asking yourself what story you are writing about a comment or a setback, and by choosing an action that aligns with virtue. When discomfort arrives, you can see it as a call to practice, and you can treat that call as a privilege rather than as a burden, because discomfort means that you are growing. At night, you can reflect by naming 3 moments where you behaved in ways that honored your values and 3 moments where you fell short, and you can craft a plan for improvement that emphasizes process and discipline rather than harsh self-judgment. You can end by allowing gratitude to expand your heart for the small, ordinary achievements that are often overlooked yet form the foundation of any meaningful life. When you structure your week around this cadence, you will discover that your life no longer feels like a jittery chase for confirmation or a brittle fight against uncertainty. Instead, your days become crafts where each block of attention is offered to something worth your energy, and each challenge is a teacher you choose to hear. Your calendar becomes a cultivation plan rather than a list of battles. Your relationships become fields where you practice patience, fairness, and generosity rather than arenas where you defend fragile identities. Your work becomes a service to something larger than you, and because you have refined your own quality, your work offers that service with clarity. People notice the steadiness of your presence and invite you into conversations that matter. Mentors recognize the humility of your mind and provide guidance that clarifies your path. Opportunities arrive because your reputation precedes you as someone who honors process and delivers. Obstacles appear and are handled with skill because you have trained your nerve with voluntary discomfort. Let us imagine several scenarios in which these rules express themselves with clarity, because seeing them in practice often reveals how simply they can be integrated into your current circumstances. In your professional life, consider a team project that is stuck because communication feels tainted by blame. Apply the Stoic lens by moving your focus from outcomes that you cannot force, such as perfect cooperation from others, and toward process within your control, such as the quality of your own messages and the integrity of your own actions. Practice impression appraisal by not accepting the story that the other side is unwilling, but rather recognizing the possibilities that hidden constraints exist, and then plan an honest meeting where you make proposals that show benefit to them and ask for feedback that you treat as a genuine invitation to improve. Do the difficult thing now by initiating this meeting despite the fear of rejection. Accept what you cannot change if they do not respond positively by recognizing that you honored your values and kept your influence within your sphere, and act within what you can by continuing to send clear communication and by documenting your own contributions. If your integrity is unassailable and your craft is reliable, the project may improve on its own or may unfold in a way that still benefits your skill development even if the external result does not match your ideal. In either scenario, you will have strengthened your reputation for calm professionalism and you will have kept your focus where it belongs. In your personal life, imagine a relationship where your desire for closeness is met with distance, perhaps due to your partner's stress or yours. Apply the rules by remembering that their emotions are beyond your direct control, and yet your actions are not. Treat your impressions as proposals. By refusing the narrative that they must satisfy you to prove love, and by choosing instead to focus on how you can be a source of kindness and clarity in their life. Do not define yourself rigidly by the role of a romantic partner or a parent or a friend, but remember that your identity is anchored in virtues that are portable across roles. Practice voluntary discomfort by delaying your urge to push for an immediate resolution and by accepting the discomfort of patience without confirmation, because your partner's capacity to open often requires the absence of pressure as much as it requires the presence of care. Plan with a long view by recognizing that trust is rebuilt over time and that rushing closeness may erode it. Focus on process by ensuring that your behavior matches your values, honesty, fairness, respect, and let outcomes arrive as they may without bargaining. By acting within your control and accepting what you cannot change, you will often see your relationship shift towards stability, not because of dramatic pronouncements, but because your integrity creates an atmosphere where both parties can breathe and rebuild. In your creative life, consider a project that you have been postponing for years, perhaps because you have convinced yourself you must present it perfectly before anyone sees it. Apply the rules by moving away from outcome-focused narratives such as fame or acclaim and toward process that aligns with your craft, such as daily writing, regular revision, and feedback loops that refine your work. Do the difficult thing now by sharing your first draft with a small trusted circle and by accepting criticism with humility, knowing that your identity is not fragile if your core is anchored in curiosity and diligence. Treat the impression that your work is not ready as a proposal rather than as a fact, because readiness often comes only through exposure and iteration. Plan with a long view by scheduling months of disciplined creation rather than weeks of frantic polishing, and practice preparedness over urgency by building habits that guarantee consistency regardless of mood. If you honor process and if you do not cling to rigid identity as an artist who cannot fail, then your work grows steadily and eventually reaches a threshold where it gathers its own audience, because the world responds to authenticity and craft. You may discover that success emerges not as an explosion but as a pattern of engagement that quietly accumulates, and that this pattern is more satisfying than any single moment of applause because it sustains you through quieter seasons and gives you deeper roots. The heart of these stories lies not in dramatic miracles but in simple decisions made with integrity and sustained over time. When you invest your energy into controlling what is yours and surrendering what is not, your life gains a clarity that feels luminous because it is free of the weariness that accompanies fighting battles you cannot win. Consider what happens to your inner world when you no longer measure yourself against other people's success but instead measure yourself against your own commitments. Consider how your days change when you stop looking for external validation before deciding whether to do the right thing. Consider how your body relaxes when you accept that discomfort is not your enemy but your trainer. Consider how your mind quiets when you treat impressions as proposals and spend your days creating rather than reacting. Many people believe that manifesting what you want means performing rituals that attract the universe's attention and petitioning fate to grant you favors. Stoicism invites you to perform a different kind of ritual, one that is accessible yet demanding, one that is ordinary yet transformative, one that is simple yet profound. This ritual is not a symbol or an effect but a practice. You breathe and choose wisely. You move and work with discipline. You speak and act with fairness. You accept and move forward with courage. You build and build and build until what you have built begins to invite what you want. If you would like to refine this practice into a daily rhythm that can serve you over months and years, begin by choosing a small set of anchors that require minimal energy yet carry maximum impact. Anchor 1 is the control check every morning. Ask what lies within your control today and what does not. Write 3 tasks that you own fully and then place your energy there before turning to anything else. Anchor 2 is the virtue focus. Decide which quality you will cultivate, such as patience or generosity or courage, and then observe your day for moments where you can practice it, because your character grows through repetition and your presence becomes warmer when virtue becomes your companion. Anchor 3 is the discomfort practice. Schedule a small inconvenience that you will embrace, such as a brisk morning walk without your phone, a cold shower that makes you feel awake, or a straightforward call that you have been postponing. Discomfort will become your teacher and your discipline will become your ally. Anchor 4 is the impression pause. Set up your environment so that you can breathe before you reply to provocations, whether by stepping away from the screen for a minute or by asking a simple internal question before acting. Your calm becomes a resource that you can draw from and that others will seek in you. Anchor 5 is the process promise. At the end of your day, review what you produced and what you promised to produce tomorrow, and write down the smallest possible step that you will take to honor that promise. This keeps your forward motion steady and reduces the power of inertia. Anchor 6 is the long view visualization. Once a week, spend time imagining your future as someone who is shaped by today's choices, seeing the projects you might build, the relationships you might deepen, and the person you might become. This clarifies intention without demanding immediate outcomes. Anchor 7 is the acceptance declaration. At the end of each day, name one thing you cannot change that you have accepted today and one thing you can change that you will address tomorrow. This keeps you grounded in reality and active in service. When you apply these anchors consistently, you will feel the rhythm of your life stabilize. You will begin to notice a certain inevitability about the results that come, not because the universe moved, but because you moved with clarity and courage. Your relationships improve because you carry less pressure into them and more presence. Your work strengthens because you invest in craft and maintain integrity in the face of setbacks. Your mind quiets because you stop fighting what you cannot steer and start steering what you can. Your body relaxes because you have taught it that effort can be comfortable even when it is challenging. Your soul rests because your identity is anchored in values that do not depend on applause. The 10 Stoic rules in this practical form are not commandments but invitations to craft your life with meaning. They call you to give your days to worthy pursuits, to speak honestly, to act courageously, and to accept reality while working within it. They turn your desire for manifestation into a way of being that already attains what you seek. The satisfaction of knowing you chose well, the pleasure of skill developed over time, the peace of character cultivated by discipline, and the joy of influence that matters. Let us now deepen our understanding by exploring how ancient Stoic principles translate into everyday expressions of human maturity. Consider the dichotomy of control, which reminds us that our sovereignty rests on the inner choices we make while the weather of external events falls outside the circumference of our grip. Its modern expression is simple yet profound. The opinions of others are not your master, your boss's approval is not your oxygen, and the stock market's mood is not your measure of worth. When you internalize this principle, you will find that your days no longer hinge on applause and that your energy is freed for creative work. You will discover that your relationships mature because they no longer demand constant validation, and that your focus is freed for decisions that shape your future. Next, consider virtue orientation, which calls us to pursue excellence for its own sake, to let our effort be our pride rather than the contingent reward. In the morning, choose your work with the intent to serve the good, and in the evening, measure yourself by whether you honored that intent. Virtue becomes your compass and your progress becomes the fruit of integrity. Then reflect on resilience training, which reminds us that we are builders who need to test our structures before we need them. Practice voluntary discomfort so your willpower remains supple, so your identity does not collapse under the first draft of criticism, and so your courage is available whenever life asks you to act. Train your mind to treat impressions as proposals, not facts, so that you navigate conflicts with clarity and lead with presence rather than panic. Recognize that who you are beneath your roles is the story of your virtues, and that releasing rigid identity frees you to play many roles with dignity and to carry your values through each. Organize your life around process over outcome so your craft develops steadily, and take the difficult step immediately so momentum builds. Remember that long-view planning builds your capacity to become the kind of person whose actions seem to gather opportunities around them, and remember that acceptance of what cannot change frees your energy to act on what you can. When you turn these principles into a daily cadence that you practice with kindness toward yourself, you will find that manifestation no longer feels like trying to summon forces beyond you, but becomes an experience of participating in a life that fits you because you have shaped it to fit your deepest values. To illustrate how this can happen in practice, imagine an entrepreneur who has struggled with anxiety about external factors that regulate their industry. They decide to apply the Stoic rules by focusing on process, not outcome, by doing the difficult thing now rather than waiting for more certainty, by practicing voluntary discomfort through early mornings and honest calls, by treating first impressions with thoughtful pauses, and by planning with the long view that emphasizes building capacity rather than chasing immediate profit. Over months, their reputation grows as a person who delivers and communicates clearly. Opportunities begin to arise through referrals because clients trust their integrity. They find partners who are drawn to their humility and courage. Obstacles still appear, but they are handled with a calm that comes from training. Their life feels less like a fight against fate and more like a dance with reality where they lead through virtue. In another example, consider a creator who has relied on external validation for their confidence. They learn to anchor their identity in virtues rather than in titles. They begin to do difficult things now by sharing early drafts and accepting feedback. They practice discomfort by meeting deadlines even when inspiration is absent, and they plan with the long view that focuses on the development of craft. Their work eventually resonates with an audience because they have stayed honest with their process, and while that resonance may be modest at first, it is enough to sustain their discipline over time. The work reaches people who value depth over flash, and the creator discovers that the most satisfying success is the internal shift from dependency to independence, from chase to craft. In your own life, you can begin this transformation by making small commitments that you can keep, because consistency is the river that carries meaning forward. Pick one virtue, such as patience, and treat every encounter as an invitation to practice that virtue. When you feel irritation, breathe and ask how you can be patient rather than how you can force compliance. When you feel urgency, pause and ask how patience serves your long view over time. Patience will become your signature, and your relationships will thank you for it. Choose one small discomfort that you will embrace daily and track how your willingness to be uncomfortable changes your entire energy. You will find that the discomfort of an early cold shower or a brief walk can rewire your nervous system toward action rather than avoidance. Practice impression appraisal by reading challenging content and training your mind to disagree with it calmly rather than react defensively. You will begin to see the world with fewer distortions, and your influence will grow because people trust your discernment. Prioritize process over outcome by placing your focus on the production of value rather than on the counting of success. If you write a paragraph a day and publish weekly, you will write an album of ideas over a year, and the audience will arrive because your consistency signals seriousness. Do the difficult thing now by tackling the smallest step of your hardest task before anything else. When you find the fear before you begin, you will discover that fear often shrinks when faced, and momentum will carry you through the rest. Practice long-view planning by identifying one person whose opinion you value in your craft and asking for guidance once a month. Your growth will be visible and your network will be deep rather than wide. Practice acceptance by naming one thing you cannot change that you have accepted today, and acceptance will free your attention for action and your energy for innovation. This series of micro-commitments becomes a daily liturgy of virtue and courage, and this liturgy forms a life that manifests what you want by making you someone who is worth wanting. It is essential as we close this meditation to acknowledge that Stoicism does not guarantee the events you picture, yet it guarantees the integrity of your reaction and the integrity of your effort. And integrity, when it is consistent and practiced with kindness, often produces outcomes that are not only desirable but worthy because they are earned through character. Do not assume that Stoicism is about suppressing emotion or becoming indifferent to what happens. Instead, understand it as an invitation to feel deeply and to choose actions that honor your values even when your feelings are stormy. When someone tells you to think positive without doing the work, that is not Stoicism. When someone tells you to move calmly toward what matters and to accept what you cannot, that is the heart of Stoicism. You may hear the phrase that everything will come to you in relation to the 10 rules presented here, and the truth that sits beneath that phrase is neither magic nor coercion but rather alignment. The world will come into alignment with you when you align yourself with what is true and good, and alignment means the exchange of value between people and projects that share purpose. If your work represents clarity, courage, and fairness, then you will meet people and circumstances that share those qualities because human culture creates echo chambers of values. If your choices demonstrate humility and generosity, then doors open to you not because you demanded access, but because people sense that your presence will serve their interest. This is the paradox of manifestation through Stoic practice. The more you release the grip of ego, the more influence you gain, the more you honor what is beyond you. The more agency you feel inside, the more you accept reality, the more you can change what lies within your control. When you plant seeds of virtue with patience and water them with daily action, the world responds not as a magician responding to a plea, but as a garden responding to a gardener. And if you tend the garden long enough, you discover that the harvest arrives in ways that are both practical and beautiful. Take this into your day with compassion for yourself and respect for the process. Begin where you are, do what you can, and let the rhythm of your practice grow from small habits into powerful traits. Remember that manifestation in Stoicism is less about conjuring and more about becoming, and becoming is not a sudden revelation but a series of daily vows that you renew with courage. You have the capacity to decide who you will be today. You have the capacity to choose the actions that honor your values. You have the capacity to build a life that fits your soul because your values are your compass. In the quiet of your morning, in the middle of your afternoon's challenges, and in the rest of your evening's reflection, carry the 10 rules with you as steady companions. Control what you can, focus on noble purpose, fortify your resolve, practice seeing, choose discomfort, do the difficult thing now, remain flexible in identity, honor process over outcome, plan for the long view, and accept what you cannot change while acting within what you can. Let these companions guide your choices and shape your days, and watch as your world aligns around you in a way that feels both natural and inevitable. Everything that is meant to be will touch your life because you will have made yourself a place where meaning can take root, where courage can grow, and where fairness can serve, and that is how your life manifests what you truly want in a way that dignifies both you and those around you.